Start the recording.
Terrific. Again, I want to welcome all of the members, staff, and guests to the April meeting of the members of the Dormitory Authority of the State of New York. It's a pleasure to be in this room with a number of people. It's a pleasure to know that we are that some form of normalcy is our objective, and we're getting there. It's a great feeling. Thank you all for being here. As I said earlier to some of you, it's great that you came down from Albany. It's a sacrifice to make to come to the city from Albany and then to come all the way downtown. It's just great to see you. Thank you for making that sacrifice. Before we can actually move to the agenda items, we need to have Ms. Richards call the roll. Sarah?
Great. Good morning, everyone. Today's board meeting, we have our chair present, Al Carney, our vice chair, John Johnson, Beryl Snyder, our board secretary, Jerry Romsky, Wellington Chen, Janice McKinney, Joan Sullivan, Phyllis Morris, and Ken Evans. We are missing Adrian Swazurski and John Gardner today for board members. From DASNY staff, we have Ruben McDaniel, Paul Koopman, Nadine Fontaine, Portia Lee, Steve Curro, Kim Ellis, Kathy Ebert, Ricardo Solomon, Dina Amodio, Karen Ellinger, Jeff Gordon, Matt Bergen, Craig Schreivogel, Alex Sardine, Dave Ostrander, Steve Kosher is joining us by phone, Deb Fasser, Amanda Nazario, and myself. From our bond counsel firms, we have Damon Pace, Natalia Pearson-Farrar, Melissa Bennett, Allison Radicke, and Michael Cobbs, and we also have 4 members of the public joining us today. And unless I missed anyone, that is it, Mr. Chair, and I turn it back over to you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Welcome to those members of the public who have chosen to join us today. It's good to have you. The first order of business is the election of officers. The resolution appears behind tab 1. Are there any questions with regard to the officers on the roster, proposed officers on the roster? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve the roster? So, Jerry, thank you very much. Is there a second?
Second.
Wellington, thank you for the second. All in favor, please indicate with aye. 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 Is there any opposition? Are there any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries unanimously.
Mr. Chairman, before you move on, I just want to let the board know, as soon as we're back in person,
yes,
we'll let you meet some of the authorized officers and have them come through next time we're in Albany.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great. It would be great to put faces with the names, which we have done, I think, once.
We've done before, yeah. We just haven't been out so long. It just feels like we haven't done it. So we'll do that when we get back.
It is great to get back. We have minutes from the March 2nd board meeting. You've all had a chance to review them. Are there any proposed revisions, corrections? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve the minutes?
It's Joan. I make the motion.
Joan, thank you very much. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Beryl. All in favor, please indicate with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is there any opposition? Are there any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. Mr. Romsky, the Finance Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Finance met yesterday, live and in person at this very room, and also by way of Zoom. We first adopted the Finance Committee meeting minutes from the March 1st meeting, the Finance Committee. Then we proceeded to address the first time on resolution to proceed from Yeshiva University. After some discussion, we unanimously agreed to recommend that be approved at today's board meeting. Then we advanced to the Cornell University offering. Again, after some discussion, we unanimously agreed that be approved at today's board meeting. We followed that up with the Northwell Health Obligated Group. After some significant discussion relating to the components of the obligated group and the important services that Northwell performs for the state, especially downstate, we also unanimously agreed that resolution be approved at today's full board meeting. Those are both single approvals, And the third single approval was just the update on the school district bond, where because of various reasons related to the current interest rate environment, the attractiveness of the DASNY program has sort of been enhanced, and therefore we agreed to recommend that today's full board meeting at the $750 million amount that we agreed at the March meeting was sufficient should be adjusted upward to $1 billion. And I think that concludes my report, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
It was also nice to be back live and in person. It's a nice there. I think the flow of information is a little easier to deal with. And so thank you all. Nice to see you guys.
Jerry, thank you. That was a great report. Thank you very, very much for that. The next agenda item, we will begin to take a look at the proposed financings. Jerry has just done a very thorough job of describing them. Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Behind tab 4 is a single approval summary for Cornell University. Today we have Dave Ostrander of DASNY, Damon Pace of Orrick, and Natalie Pearson-Farrar of Golden Holly James presenting. Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mr. President. The transaction report provided to the members presents 3 series of tax exempt and or taxable fixed and or variable rate bonds in an amount not to exceed $150 million on behalf of Cornell University. Proceeds from this issuance will be used to refund all or a portion of Cornell's Series 2000A, 2000B, and 2019C bonds, all of which were issued by DASNY. All 3 series of bonds to be refunded are privately placed variable rate bonds with interest rates reset based on LIBOR plus a spread. The proposed transaction is expected to reduce the university's variable rate exposure by refunding these 3 series of bonds with publicly offered fixed rate bonds. The outstanding obligations of the university have been assigned a rating of AA1 from Moody's and AA from S&P, and accordingly, Cornell meets the requirements under DASNY's financing guidelines for the bonds to be issued as a general unsecured obligation of the university. I'll just briefly highlight some recent financials and enrollment trends for Cornell. The university has experienced strong demand and increasing enrollment over the last 5 years, despite the disruptions caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. Freshman applications were up by over 43% over 5 years, reaching a total of 67,380 for fall of 21. And Cornell has become increasingly selective over the years, accepting only 8.7% of applications for fall of 21. And overall, total FTE enrollment has increased by 11.7% over 5 years, reaching a 5-year high of 26,956 for fall of 21. When looking at the university's operations, Cornell has maintained a diverse revenue composition, and for fiscal year 21, only 19% of revenues came from student-generated sources. Operating revenues, as well as the university's operating margin, reached a 5-year high in fiscal year 21. Cornell's balance sheet reflects growing financial resources and liquidity, and unrestricted net assets increased by over 22% over 5 years, growing to $3.8 billion as of fiscal year end 2021. And lastly, the university's variable rate debt, which represents approximately half of its long-term debt, will be reduced by approximately $140 million through the proposed transaction. So at this point, unless there's any questions, I will turn it over to Damon to discuss the documents.
Thank you, David. Good morning, Chairman Carney. Long time no speak, no see.
It's good to see. It's very good to
board
see
members.
you. Good to see you. Great to see you.
And senior staff, it's a pleasure to be with you this morning. As further detailed in our letter to the board provided last week, before you for consideration is the adoption of 3 series resolutions relating to Cornell University. The proposed Series 2022 bonds will be issued pursuant to DASNY's Cornell University Revenue Bond Resolution, which the board adopted back in January 26, 2000, and which was last supplemented and amended on March 6, 2019. The related loan agreement was amended and restated as of April 25th, 2019. The amended and supplemented documents were each effective May 12th, 2020. As David mentioned, the Series 2022 bonds are to be issued at 1 or more times to refund all or a portion of DASNY's Cornell University revenue bonds, Series 2000A, 2000B, and 2019C, and to pay all or portion of the cost of issuance of the Series 22 bonds. Again, as David mentioned, each series of the bonds expected to be refunded was directly placed with and is currently held by a financial institution. Natalia?
Thank you, Damon, and good morning, Mr.
Yeah,
Chair.
It's Al Carney. Before we start, I welcome
Uh-huh.
Damon to the meeting, and I want to do the same with you. Thank you for being with us today.
Well, thank you for having us this morning. So the 2000 General Resolution, as amended and supplemented, constitutes the basic agreement between DASNY and the holders of the bonds issued thereunder. The General Resolution authorizes the issuance from time to time of multiple series of bonds in an unlimited principal amount for various purposes, including 1, financing or refinancing the cost of projects for the university, 2, paying associated cost of issuance, and 3, paying or providing for the payment of outstanding notes or bonds issued for the benefit of the university. Each series of bonds issued under the General Resolution is secured on a parity basis with other series of bonds by certain revenues, by certain funds and accounts established for the bonds, and by any other security pledged to the payment of the series of bonds. The revenues consist of certain payments to be made by the university under the loan agreement, as amended and supplemented on account of the debt service on the bonds issued under the General Resolution. So today we are requesting that the board adopt 3 series resolutions under the 2000 General Resolution. Each series 2022 resolution, individually and in the aggregate, authorizes the issuance of bonds entitled to the benefit, protection, and security of the General Resolution in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $150 million. The Series 2022 bonds are proposed to be issued to refund certain bonds as Damon described. The Series 2022 bonds are expected to be issued as publicly offered fixed rate bonds sold through a negotiated sale to a syndicate of underwriters represented by B of A Securities. However, the Series 2022 resolutions do not limit the discretion of the authorities officers to determine to issue the Series 2022 bonds in any other configurations. Additionally, the Series 2022 resolutions delegate to any authorized officer the powers more particularly described in our letter to the board, including to determine the final terms of the bonds and to execute and deliver various documents in connection with the bond issuance, including a bond purchase agreement and a supplement to the loan agreement. So this concludes our presentation, and we're happy to answer any questions you may have about the transaction. Again, thank you for having us here this morning.
Thank you, Natalia. Are there questions for Natalia, Damon, or David? You've had a chance then to read the resolutions. Are there any questions about the resolution itself? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve it?
So moved.
Second.
Beryl has moved the motion, moved the resolution, and I think Wellington seconded that motion. I'm sorry. All in favor, please indicate with aye. Aye. Is there any opposition, or are there any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion is approved unanimously. Natalia, before you sign off, would you please give Robert James my best regards?
I will, thank you.
All right, you take care.
You too.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Behind tab
Thank
5.
you.
Thank you. Behind tab 5 is a Northwell Health Obligated Group Single Approval Transaction. The summary will be presented by Matt Bergen of DASNY. We have Allison Radecki of Oric and Michael Cobbs of Brown Hutchison. Mr. Bergen.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning, everyone. The staff report provided to the members presents a 30-year term for a bond issue in an amount not to exceed $820 million on behalf of the Northwell Health Obligated Group. The project that you're considering will finance various construction, renovation, and modernization projects for the members of the Northwell Health Obligated Group, as well as refund all or a portion of DASNY's North Shore Long Island Jewish Obligated Group Revenue Bonds, Series 2009B, C, and D. As this is an obligated group structure, the obligations issued under the Master Trust Indenture, or MTI, will be a joint and several obligation of each member of the obligated group and will be secured by a lien on certain gross receipts of the members of the obligated group. It is anticipated that the existing mortgages will be eliminated once the consents of 51% of the holders of the Master Trust Indenture obligations are received, and this is expected to occur by the closing of the Series 2022 bonds. This change in the security was also described when we did the 2019 financing for the Northwell Health Obligated Group, and the 2019 POS included deemed consent language for this amendment to the MTI, as will the 2022 POS, and specifically, it will state that by their purchase of the Series 2022 bonds, the purchasers shall consent and shall be deemed to have consented to this amendment. In looking at the obligated group, they have consistently recorded over 100 days cash on hand, and their cushion ratio has averaged nearly 13-to-1. The obligated group's operating gain has averaged nearly $235 million over the last 5 years. The system's inpatient market share is approximately 31%, which is based on the most recent information available and is more than double that of its nearest competitor. And when we talk about the system, there are 4 hospitals that are in the system, but not in the obligated group, as noted in the staff report. As of December 31st, 2020, the members of the obligated group represented nearly 82% of the total operating revenue and 83% of the total assets of the system. We provided attachment 1, and this is an organizational chart that shows the system and the members of the obligated group. And I wanted to note that Northwell Health Inc. is the parent of the system. However, Northwell Healthcare Inc. is the parent of the obligated group. The staff report also goes into some detail on the COVID-19 impact. As the largest health system in New York State, the system played an integral role in partnering with New York State, community organizations, and other health systems in planning and responding to COVID-19. The system provided one of the first private clinical laboratories approved by New York State and the federal government, which conducted COVID-19 testing and also devised and executed COVID-19 vaccine distribution plans in numerous locations throughout its service area. Northwell Health also provides free testing and vaccinations in many medically underserved communities. The negative financial impact of the coronavirus pandemic on the system is also described and was primarily attributable to reductions in patient service volume and incremental costs resulting from the changes in operations in response to the crisis. Also described are the monies received from the CARES Act, the Consolidated Appropriations Act, temporary Medicare rate enhancements, Medicare advances, and additional federal funding, including funding from the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA. The expected ratings of the bond issue are A3, A-, and A-. And now, Mr. Chairman, I would like to hand things over to Allison and Michael. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Matt. Well, good morning, everyone. You have before you for your consideration today the Series 2022A resolution authorizing up to $820 million worth of Northwell Health Obligated Group revenue bonds. The proceeds of the bonds will be loaned to Northwell Healthcare Inc. pursuant to a loan agreement with the authority and will be used for the benefit of certain members of the obligated group. The Series 2022A bonds will be secured by obligation number 63 issued pursuant to the Master Trust Indenture. Currently, the obligated group consists of 10 New York not-for-profit corporations, and they include North Shore University Hospital, Glen Cove Hospital, Plainview Hospital, Long Island Jewish Medical Center, Northwell Health Stern Family Center for Rehabilitation, Northwell Healthcare Inc., who's the borrower, Staten Island University Hospital, Huntington Hospital, South Shore University Hospital, and Lenox Hill Hospital. And now I'm going to turn it over to Michael Cobbs from Brown Hutchinson to review the transaction and the series resolution. Michael?
Yeah, yes. The Series 2022A bonds are expected to be issued as tax-exempt fixed-rate bonds and used to refund the authority Series 2009B to Series 2009C and Series 2009D bonds to finance certain projects for various members of the obligated group and to pay certain costs of issuance of the Series 2022A bonds. The Series 2022A bonds will be special obligations of the authority payable solely from revenues, which consist of certain payments to be made under the loan agreement and payments made under the obligation. The obligations to the authority will be secured by the gross receipts pledge of all members pursuant to the master trust indenture. The series resolution delegates to various officers of the authority the powers, among others, to establish the principal amount of the Series 2022A bonds not to exceed $820 million in the aggregate, the date or dates on which any Series 2022 bonds will pay interest and principal and mature, which maturity may not exceed 30 years from November 1st, immediately next succeeding the date of initial issuance. The rate or rates at which the Series 2022A bonds will bear interest, provided that the true interest cost of the Series 2022A bonds will not exceed 7.5% if tax exempt and 10% if taxable. The redemption dates and prices and provisions for tender for purchase. The form of the Series 2022A bonds. There is no debt service reserve fund requirement in connection with the Series 2022A bonds. In addition, the series resolution authorizes the execution and delivery of the bond purchase agreement and the loan agreement and approves a draft preliminary official statement, authorizes a final official statement, and authorizes authority officers to do all other things necessary or advisable in connection with the issuance of the Series 2022A bonds. The Series 2022A bonds will be secured by the funds and accounts established pursuant to the series resolution and a pledge of payments to be made to the authority under the loan agreement and the obligations. I'll turn it back over to Allison.
Thank you. As Matt had stated, under the master trust indenture, each member is jointly and severally liable to pay all of the obligations issued thereunder. Each obligation will be secured by a pledge of the gross receipts of all of the members of the obligated group, and those gross receipts constitute all revenue derived from healthcare and health-related services of all of the organizations. Members of the obligated group may leave the obligated group and new institutions may join the obligated group, but only if certain debt service coverage tests and other conditions that are provided for in the MTI are satisfied. The MTI permits members of the obligated group to incur additional indebtedness, pledge, or otherwise encumber a portion of their accounts receivable and secure indebtedness on a parity with the bonds within certain prescribed limitations. The MTI requires members of the obligated group to maintain certain debt service coverage ratios and contains certain limits on the amount of cash and other property that may be transferred to parties that are not members of the obligated group. The Series 2022 bonds are proposed to be sold through a negotiated sale to a syndicate of underwriters led by Citigroup Global Markets. The bond purchase agreement to be entered into with the authority, Northwell Healthcare, and the underwriters contains terms and conditions which are customary in connection with the sale of the bonds of the authority. And that concludes our remarks on this transaction. And we welcome any comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. Before I ask members to vote on this proposal, back to Michael Cobb, I believe this is your first presentation to the DASNY board. Am I correct?
Yes, that is, sir.
Well, then let me say quickly that it's a pleasure to have you with us. And we promise to make it harder and harder for you.
I've been told. No.
Now, are there any questions for Matt, Allison, or Michael? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve the resolution?
So moved.
Jerry, I think, beat you to the button, Wellington.
Okay.
You can second.
I will do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wellington. All in favor, please indicate with aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Are there any abstentions? Hearing none, then the resolution is passed and it's passed unanimously. Thank you. Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Behind tab 6 is the school district's revenue bond financing program single approval transaction. As Chairman of the Finance Committee, Romsky noted, we are asking for an increase in size of this transaction, but no other changes. Mr. Ostrander of DASNY will be presenting, and we have Melissa Bennett of Barclay Damon available if there are questions. Dave.
Thank you, Mr. President. The members will recall at last month's board meeting, the board authorized and adopted the necessary documents for the issuance of bonds on behalf of various New York State school districts. At the time, staff requested an amount not to exceed $750 million, which was expected to be sufficient to accommodate both the June new money and band refinancing pool, as well as a refunding later in the year. And as we discussed with the members at that time, when we see a rising interest rate environment, districts tend to gravitate towards the DASNY pool. And that's exactly what we've seen over the last month or so. So to date, we've received responses from 66 school districts who wish to participate, which totals over $820 million. In addition, a refunding transaction later this year could total up to $150 million. So the total amount of school district demand for new money, band refinancing, and refunding bonds now exceeds the authorized amount of $750 million. So to accommodate additional school district demand, staff recommends the board adopt an amended and restated supplemental resolution to increase the not to exceed amount from $750 million to $1 billion. There are no other changes to what the board adopted in March. And as Ruben mentioned, Melissa Bennett from Barclay Damon is in attendance if the members have any questions.
I have a question. I have a question first. Is that enough? Is that going to be enough of a cushion, the 1 billion?
It will be. Really the deadline is passed for districts to join the pool, so that amount will not increase anymore.
Great.
So that will be enough for the year.
Great question there. Thank you. Are there questions for David? Melissa is standing by, but is not going to participate in the presentation. He is available, of course, for questions. David, thank you very much. May I have a motion, please, to adopt the resolution?
I'll move Phyllis Morris.
I'm sorry, is that Phyllis? Thank you very much. Jerry seconded it. All in favor, please indicate with aye. Aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposition? Are there any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries and the resolution is passed unanimously. Thank you. Mr. President.
Mr. Chairman, we have a resolution to proceed for Yeshiva University behind tab 7. Oh, it's not tab 7, is it? Yes, behind tab 7. Matt Bergen will be giving the presentation. Steve Kozer is available for questions if necessary. This again is a resolution to proceed for Yeshiva University. Matt?
Thank you, Mr. President. The board is being asked to adopt a resolution to proceed for one or more series of fixed and or variable rate, tax exempt and or taxable bonds with a term not to exceed 31 years in an amount not to exceed $165 million on behalf of Yeshiva University. Proposed bond issuance will be used to refund the university's Series 2009 and Series 2011A DASNY bonds and to finance approximately $20 million of new money projects. The new money and refunding components of the proposed financing are each anticipated to provide annual cash flow savings and better align expenses with the useful life of the assets being financed. The new money proceeds will finance projects under the university's Energy Master Plan, and the financing of these projects is expected to be cash flow positive to the university, as the annual debt service on the new money is estimated to be approximately $1.2 million, and the anticipated energy savings is estimated to be approximately $1.7 million per year. Regarding the refundings, debt service on the Series 2009 and 2011A bonds is currently approximately $12.2 million a year. Debt service on the refunding bonds is anticipated to be approximately $5.5 million a year during the interest-only period, and then approximately $8.4 million a year when the principal amortization begins. The refunding is estimated to provide net present value savings of approximately $6.5 million overall, or approximately 5% of the bonds being refunded. And with regard to the 2022 bonds, the bonds are anticipated to be rated by S&P, which rates Yeshiva University BBB- with a stable outlook. In accordance with DASNY's financing guidelines, the loan agreement will be a general unsecured obligation of the university. However, the financing documents may include additional security provisions based on the market conditions presented. And I also wanted to note that, subject to review by tax counsel, the university may repay principal over approximately 25 years following 5 years of interest-only payments for both the new money and the refundings. With respect to the operations of the university, Yeshiva has reported deficits since 2008, when the university took on additional expenses related to the expansions at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine. At the same time, net tuition revenue growth stalled, endowment losses reduced revenue from the spending rate, and federal research funding was scaled back. During this time, the university's balance sheet has helped support operations by utilizing a combination of borrowing for working capital, investment sales, and the monetization of certain real estate and receivables. As detailed in the staff report, around 2014, the university engaged a team of financial advisors to assist with the development and implementation of short and long-term strategies to better align Yeshiva's expenses with revenues and improve liquidity, which the university continues to implement. One of these strategies highlighted in the report was the September 2015 transfer of the Albert Einstein College of Medicine to a newly formed education corporation controlled by Montefiore Medicine. To note, the level of the deficits over the past 5 years are well below the deficits Yeshiva reported while the medical school was included in its operations. Excluding a one-time gain included in Yeshiva's 2017 operating revenue, the deficits have declined in each of the past 5 years, and the university continues to evaluate and implement strategies to improve both operating margins by controlling expenses and enhancing revenues, with a strategic focus on growing and expanding graduate programs which produce favorable margins. At fiscal year end 2021, Yeshiva reported approximately $647 million of investments and approximately $649 million of total net assets. Total cash and investments to debt was 2.5 to 1 in 2021, compared to the DASNY median of 2.6 to 1, and total cash and investments to operating expenses was 2.7 to 1 in 2021, compared to the DASNY median of 1.7 to 1. Regarding enrollment, the university has recorded steady enrollment, and despite the COVID-19 pandemic, total FTE enrollment increased approximately 3% since the fall of 2019, primarily due to the growth in graduate enrollment. In summary, the new money and refunding components of the proposed financing are each anticipated to provide annual cash flow savings and better align expenses with the useful life of the assets being financed. And Yeshiva University has been a DASNY client since 1994 and has always met its obligations to DASNY on time and in full. Mr. Chairman.
Matthew. Sorry, I'm getting feedback. Makes me sound like the Grinch who was trying to steal Christmas. Are there questions for Matt? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve the transaction?
So moved.
Thank you, Wellington. Is there a second?
Second, Janice.
Janice, thank you very much. All in favor, please indicate with aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Are there any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you all very much for all the hard work that you do to get these presentations before the board. Let me make a comment before we go on to your report, Mr. President. Staff works awfully hard to put these presentations together. The bond counsel who join us work equally hard to make sure that they cover all the nits and lice that are necessary to make these transactions work. I know that everybody is reading the material. I'm not concerned about that. But please don't hesitate to raise questions with staff or with bond counsel as we go through these monthly presentations. It's important that you do that. I have an opportunity to talk to staff members individually. We all do. But if you do have questions, raise them, because it makes it clear to staff that it may help to improve the quality of their presentation, actually, which I think would be hard to do because these presentations are, for the most part, excellent. So just be mindful of that, if you would. Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I would just echo the remarks about the staff. They do a great job of presenting, and I appreciate all the great work that you do. Just a few comments today on the state budget. It has not passed yet. We anticipate it'll pass sometime later this week, if all goes well. There was a minor extender done for payroll. So what we'll do, instead of reporting today on the enacted budget, Nadine and I will put together a brief memo when it's passed about those items that affect DASNY, and we'll send them to each of the board members so you have that information. And then at our next board member, we'll have a more fulsome conversation about
May I make a comment? Certainly. I understand, Nadine, that you have worked extraordinarily in support of DASNY's budget effort. And that it didn't pass means that your presentation, which was scheduled for today, will probably not happen. I'm sorry that that's the case, but it's good to have you with us, and good to know that you're keeping up as best you can.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Very welcome.
Along those lines, Mr. Chairman, I woke up this morning at 6 o'clock in the morning and got an email from Nadine at 3:21 this morning about the budget. So Nadine, thank you for your good work, and thank you for the coffee and whoever put in your cup today. Keep me going, but all the staff's done a great job in working, shepherding things through the budget. Second is we'll be revising our procurement guidelines. It's time for one to do that. Obviously, procurement reaches many areas of DASNY, but also is a place where fraud and other things can be wrought. And so as we look at design, build, and other delivery methods, we look at things like PM Web being implemented, we felt it was time to do a full review and revision, if necessary, of our procurement guidelines. So we've assembled a team of the folks from procurement, General Counsel's office, and the various components to address it. They'll work together, make recommendations. Sometime this summer, you will see a draft of our recommendations for the changes in procurement guidelines. It will be a heavy lift for us. I just want to make you aware that will be coming to you shortly, and something that we're very interested in, glad to do. There was no specific event that made us wake up and say, oh, we need to do something about this. It really was kind of a culmination of the new delivery methods, as well as just time passing that we want to go back and look at this more closely.
I understand that there's a committee comprising multiple functions at DASNY contributing to this effort.
That's correct. Matt Moore's procurement group will be the lead on that committee. Nadine and General Counsel's office, of course, will be very involved. And then the various functional areas will be brought in as necessary to contribute to their various areas to make sure that the procurement guidelines match with what we actually do on a day-to-day basis. And then also from a compliance perspective, we're in compliance, and then all the safeguards are in place. We feel comfortable that if any actions happen, we know they happen, we know where they are.
Looking forward to it.
So we're looking forward to that. Finally, I last week went to the South Bronx. The Urban Health Plan facility had its groundbreaking for a new facility. It's 11th facility, 50 years in existence. Urban Health Plan really provides a great service to that part of the Bronx. Bronx County is 62 of 62 counties when it comes to health outcomes. So it's sorely needed, those services. This facility itself will have an ambulatory care facility on the bottom floor, but above that, they'll have 5 floors of specialized care. So if someone gets referred, instead of having to go outside of the Bronx, they'll have areas there where people can go. It also is clean up a brownfield. And sometimes our smaller transactions are our best. This was a $60 million private placement that was a grind for our staff over the last 12 to 18 months. Preston Hollow, the borrower, could not be more complimentary of the staff, and Portia, you and your team did on this. So I want to tell you, I appreciate that. But most touching, the daughter of the founder of Urban Health Plan, who's now has to be in her 70s, was emotionally touched by this whole transaction. Just kind of being there and seeing the impact we have on communities. You know, the boardroom seems a little sterile sometimes. You get down there and see the impact. It really is moving. And I really did appreciate the work DASNY did. We got a lot of great props. I took all the credit in the world for it. But it really was a great ceremony. And we'll be back for ribbon cutting in 18 months for that project.
This is an important organization in the South Bronx, one that some of us were familiar before the DASNY involved with this project. This is something that we can and should be proud of.
Absolutely.
We are providing improved mechanisms for healthcare to people who would not have those opportunities, but for what this organization is doing, and now what DASNY is doing for this organization. It is something that ought to be revelatory for some of us. And if you know the South Bronx, then it is. It's a very special organization. Thank you for making that possible.
Absolutely. That concludes my president's report. We can move on to the staff reports now.
Sir.
Right. Steve Curl, construction report.
Good morning.
Steve, how are you?
I'm great. How you doing?
We're fine. Thank you.
All right, I'll start with GOZER, Governor's Office for Storm Recovery. Just a quick update on this program. As I've reported in the past, we are coming quickly to the conclusion of the program deadline, which is September of 2022. We're actively managing 23 projects today, trying to wrap them up by the deadline. There are a few projects that are going to spill over beyond the deadline. We've informed GOZER of that, so everybody's in the know. But we are, pushing quite hard. Most of these projects are downstate in either Long Island or in New York City, battling a lot of issues on some of the projects, but moving quickly toward a conclusion. We do meet with GOZER regularly. We're on a monthly basis with them with regard to closing out the program. And closing out the program means that all consultant and contractor contracts are actually closed out. So it's not just substantial completion, it's actually final payment and closing out of the contracts and the projects. So a lot of work to do there over the next 6 or so months, but we are working hard toward meeting that deadline. On the Suny side, construction continues at Smith Hall out at Suny Cortland. I visited the project in mid-March. This one started in December. We have to finish it up by July of this year for August move-in. This is the second tower. It's a 9-story gut renovation of a residence hall. We're moving pretty well on that project. There are some concerns with regard to lead times on certain materials, but we do believe that the contractor, the general contractor there, will deliver for us. A large project at Suny New Paltz, Wasting Hall, is planned for a May 23rd start. This is a $42 million gut renovation of a 4-story residence hall. We're adding a 5th story and a new roof onto it. We have our construction manager at risk contractor in place. They're putting the final touches on the GMP, and they should be beginning in late May. At Suny Albany, we have another $43 million gut renovation of 2 residence halls starting this summer. We are actually opening bids for that project tomorrow. We're all very anxious to get the bid opening behind us and see what those numbers look like, and get a contractor signed up and on board to begin that work. Both of those projects have deadlines of July 23 for the Albany project and 24 for the New Paltz project. In addition, I reported last time we had 15 summer projects. For this summer, that number has not changed. I wanted to just comment quickly on OCM, Office of Cannabis Management. We are preparing somewhat behind the scenes for the anticipated legislation related to the build out of the cannabis dispensaries across New York State. As such, within the construction division, DASNY's Real Property Group has been working closely with realtors on the selection criteria for dispensaries. DASNY's interior design group has been working on developing specifications and program details for the dispensaries. DASNY's procurement department is contributing in the areas of purchasing, professional services, and construction contracting. And our design and construction folks have also been working on the program and reaching out to a few of our DASNY term consultants who have experience in this retail sector. We're also working on a project delivery strategy for the program, knowing that 150 sites will need to be implemented over a condensed timeframe. So we're just coming out of the blocks here, but more to come next month. And lastly, on Cuny, Mike Stabulos and I have been working with Cuny on updating our project management agreement with Cuny. Those are really the rules that both organizations follow as we engage in their construction program. We held the last of several meetings earlier this week with Cuny's management staff and worked through the final inquiries Cuny had with regard to our PMA language. This PMA is quite dated. I believe we last updated it back in the early 2000s, so the timing is right. We hope to receive a final draft from Cuny in the not too distant future, and then we'll grab our legal team and theirs and work toward finalizing that. Just a couple of other administrative items. Our upstate design and construction department is now taking firm shape under Molly Larkin. 3 chief project managers have been installed by region and staff assigned to each on both the design and construction side. The model is a continuation of what we implemented in Western New York, and once fully implemented successfully, we'll move our attention to our downstate New York office. And lastly, on PM Web, we continue with the implementation under phase 1. We're up to about 75 projects now added into the system and processing in PM Web. The balance of our existing projects are still back in Contract Manager. We're still targeting May of this year for phase 1 completion, and we continue adding selected projects into that system for administration. Phase 2 will follow in early 2023. And that concludes my report.
Steve, thank you very much. Are there questions for Steve?
It's Joan. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Steve, last time you talked about your significant staffing vacancies. How are you doing on filling those?
We're doing the best we can. HR has done a monumental job. We have about 23 vacancies today, and those vacancies are really a function of a number of things: retirements, folks resigning and moving on to other opportunities. We're also trying to backfill some staff openings that we chose not to backfill during the pandemic based on workload. So it's somewhat of a perfect storm, trying to get back up to where we need to be to continue to provide services to the customer agencies. But overall, I think HR is doing a very good job. You know, it's not just the construction vacancies they're trying to fill. They've got a number of others as well. So they're certainly paying plenty of attention to our needs, and we're you know, facing some challenges, but doing our best to fill those vacancies.
Thank you very much, Steve. Thanks very much, Mr. President.
Great, thank you. Next, we'll have Nadine and her General Counsel's Office report. Nadine?
As we indicated earlier, my report will be brief because I don't have anything to report on the budget yet, but I did just want to update the board with the fact that the counsel's office has increased staff. You know, we have hired 2 new attorneys and have a 3rd attorney that's going to be starting next week. So we are currently at I wouldn't say full capacity. We could always do it more help, but we have a new counsel for corporate, managing assistant counsel in corporate, Dwight Flynn, a new managing counsel to support the finance department, which is Michael Logan. He comes to us from, I'm just pulling up his bio. He comes from us from, he was served as a bond counsel and underwriters counsel, the Harris Beach and Hudson Russ. So we're very happy to have him and support us in our finance department. And our 3rd addition will be Valerie Himilewski. She'll be our managing counsel in construction, and she'll be starting next Monday. And with that addition, we will have a full contingency in counsel's office. So I'm just happy and pleased that, the team has become well-rounded and we have the support in all divisions at this point.
Congratulations, Nadine. It sounds
Thank
like you're out there, in the vineyard trying to find the right folk.
Exactly.
It's working.
A lot of work to be done, so it's important that we have a full contingency in counsel's office to support all the work that the finance and construction team are doing. So we're happy about that.
And I think one highlight on the 3 hires, all 3 of them have either direct experience at the state or some interface with DASNY.
Oh, wow.
So in addition to their professional experience, they also have some relevant state experience, which will be really helpful as Nadine rounds her team out. So thank you, Nadine, for all that great work.
Sure, certainly.
Next up, we have the public finance report, Portia Lee.
You included in the materials of the standard public finance reports. I did want to report on the end of the fiscal year issuance. We issued $9 billion in bonds in 16 different financings last year. So our thanks to the board. Just to go through quickly, there were 7 higher ed deals, 1 BOCES, 1 library, 1 healthcare. There was the IAC transaction, school districts, 3 PIT transactions in Suny dorms. So pretty well-rounded throughout all the different types of buy-in/borrowers that we work with.
Congratulations, Portia. Great work.
Yeah,
Great.
very, very good news. And, the staff and folks, my staff, the folks in finance and the folks in counsel's office all did, tremendous job. I also wanted to report on the transactions that we priced since the last board meeting. We priced 3 transactions. They were the new school deal, 153 million, the PIT transaction, 3.09 billion. One of the things that I did want to note there, as you'll recall, we had an all MWB and service disabled veterans syndicate for the taxable transaction, which ended up being $667 million. And I have to say that transaction really priced well. We also priced the Rockefeller University transaction, $70.4 million. And, pricing is always more of an art than a science. But one of the things that I would say is that rates are rising, but moreover, the markets are volatile. And so, to see these transactions priced during the last month, it's been a challenge, but, the folks have done a really good job. And I think the clients have been really pleased with the outcome of the pricing. So really, good news there.
I want to just interrupt you a bit. For those people that don't know the financial market right now, that's an extraordinary feat, what you did. Everything is so volatile. The muni market is has gone through periods of weakness, especially very recently. So to price things so well and keep our clients happy is an extraordinary feat. And kudos to you and your department.
Thank you very much, Carol. Thank you. We appreciate that. I mean, I think as folks know, the Fed raised interest rates 25 basis points at the March meeting. I think the market is pricing in 50 basis points or, thinking that there's going to be a 50 basis points move at the May meeting. So again, the markets are tough these days.
It was inverted there for a while, right?
Yeah, the 2 and 10, the 2 and 10 year for a little bit. So just a brief market update. Total year-to-date new issue volume for this year is approximately $97.6 billion, down about 14% from this time last year. Total supply for the week is expected to be heavier at about $11.7 billion this week. As we're discussing, rates are rising, taxes and bond yields were higher yesterday with the 10-year and the 30-year both increasing by 4 basis points to 2.2% and 2.55% respectively. US government bond yields were higher yesterday as well, with the 10-year treasury yield increasing by 12 basis points to 2.54%, and the 30-year treasury increased by 9 basis points to a 2.57%. Municipal bond funds continue to report outflows. Rates are rising, a lot of volatility in the market. Just to give you a sense, just in terms of the rates, since the March 2nd board meeting, the 1-year MMD rate has increased by 76 basis points. the 10-year by 67 basis points, and the 30-year by 62 basis points. In that same time period, the 10-year treasury yield has increased by 82 basis points and 30-year by 46 basis points. So, I think for us, what we need to do is just keep in touch with the clients, particularly on the refunding transactions, as they and we continue to monitor savings. Having said that, with rates rising, we talked about this at last month's meeting, we're hearing from clients that, they're looking to access the market, given the fact that the expectation is that rates are rising, so I expect that we will see more transactions in the pipeline. One of the things Al and I were talking about a little bit earlier, as we've said in the past, gone are the days where we have sort of a lot of lead time where people say they want to come and enter the market. People are calling and saying, they want to enter the market and get on the next board agenda. So more to come on that. The last thing that I would say is I just included in your materials is one of the bond sale summaries that includes performance metrics. We're at the end of the fiscal year, so we'll be gathering all those together, putting them together for the annual bond sale report, which we will bring to the board at the June meeting. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for Portia? Hearing none.
Do we have enough flexibility? Have we given you enough flexibility, Portia, to sort of react to those, demands that things move at a pretty rapid pace? I mean, over the years, we've changed the guidelines and
Exactly.
done a number of things, but is there?
Yeah, I think we have good flexibility as far as our guidelines are concerned now. I think that we have seen and heard from clients that they've been really pleased with that. The guidelines changes have made a big difference. We've seen clients come back to us as a result of that, and they specifically said that to us as they're coming back, and they appreciate the change in the guidelines. I don't think that we've seen any need for any kind of special board meetings, but I know in the past, you guys have been open to that notion. So again, we haven't seen the need for that at this point, but I know when you've done that in the past that, the clients have been very, very appreciative.
And Portia, we're happy to do it if the circumstance arises, which you believe, Ruben believes that it's necessary, then we will not hesitate to have a meeting in order to accommodate.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Great. Finally, we have behind tab 12, our finance report with Ms. Ellis.
Thank you, Ruben. As we concluded the fiscal year, included in your materials behind tab 12 is the standing monthly financial report, which details activity through February. Total operating expenses are slightly under projection by 1.1 million. It's important to note that although we don't have final numbers on where we landed for the year, revenues are down and we are still projecting to end the year at a deficit. More details will be included in the year-end financial statements to be presented at the June board meeting. Unless there are any questions, I'll move to the next item included in your materials, which is the quarterly investment report for the period ending 12/31/2021. And I'd like to highlight the last page of that report, which is page 6, which details the trading activity with our approved list of broker dealers. As some of you may recall, under the EO10 task force, which was charged with increasing the utilization of MWBEs and state debt offerings, there were recommendations made to eliminate barriers to entry for qualified MWBEs in the broker-dealer space. As a result, DASNY modified its investment policy and guidelines to remove what was considered an artificial barrier to entry for most of these firms. All investment transactions are conducted on a delivery versus payment basis, which minimizes any risk since funds move simultaneously with the delivery of the securities. As illustrated on page 6 of the report, directing your attention to the last column, DASNY awarded over 91% or 1.4 billion in par value of trades conducted over the phone to an MWBE firm, and over 62% for another 1.4 billion to an MWB firm when trading on the Bloomberg platform. All trading is done on a competitive basis with at least 2 non-majority firms, an MWBE and or SDVOB included in each solicitation. We're approaching 10 years since we started including MWPE firms on our approved list and has resulted in 30.2 billion par value awarded to MWPE firms. Any questions? Moving to the last item included in your materials is a resolution authorizing certain individuals to approve and execute investment transactions in accordance with our investment policy and guidelines. This resolution is being updated to reflect the departure of 2 staff, one due to retirement and the other who left DASNY for other employment. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Kim. Are there questions for Kimberly? Hearing none, there is a resolution. You've had a chance to take a look at it.
Hi, Nolan.
Hello. Hey, Walter.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you. So Friday, 49.
Wellington, would you put yourself on mute? Yeah, okay. I think you did.
My apologies.
Oh, of course, of course.
Need a motion on this?
There is, and I was just about to ask for it. Well, thank you. Thank you, Jerry.
Second here.
And seconded by John Johnson. I'm sorry, all in favor, please indicate with aye. Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Or any abstentions? Kimberly Rubin mentioned earlier, I'm sorry, then the motion passes and it passes unanimously. Rubin mentioned earlier that he's going to get some people in here at some point, people whom we can eyeball, have a chance to see, wave a hand. These are people that who are officers of the corporation, of the authority. It would be nice to have you at some point bring in a few of your investment people. Since
Yes.
the board has to approve them, it'd be great to meet a few of them. No rush to get that done, and no reason other than to be able to eyeball. We're not going to ask questions or that sort of thing, but don't hesitate if you can, in Albany, in all likelihood, to bring a few of those folk with you so we can say hello and thank them for what they're doing.
We can certainly make that happen. Yep.
Thank you very much, Kimberly.
Thank you.
Is there any other business to come before this board? Hearing none, we're scheduled to have an executive session, board members and the president only. And one of the reasons, of course, somebody mentioned this earlier, that we had the subsidiary meetings at the beginning of the meeting was so that all of the staff anxious to get back to work can do just that. So if you all would give us a chance to maybe get a bottle of water, run to the loo.
Hey, Sarah?
Okay, and just for the record, the purpose of the executive session is to discuss the financial and credit history of particular corporations.
Thank you, Sarah. That's exactly right.
Okay, thank you. Let us pause this and then
Can you do that?
Let's go.
All right, that was impressive. We just left the closed session during which no decisions were made except to come back to the open session. Is there any other business to come before this board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Beryl, John, in that order. Thank you all very much. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.